Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Oliver Sullivin. Welcome to this webinar, this Unit 4 webinar, where we'll be looking at the people experience with AI-powered, I should say, FP&A and people planning and analysis. So as we go through, if anybody has any questions about any of the content that we're covering, or really anything to do with this as a topic, feel free to use the questions box, and as they start trickling through, I'll try and answer them directly, or we'll get back to you as soon as we can. With that, let's kick off this hour then with, first of all, a small PowerPoint presentation where I'll just flick through a couple of slides to really talk about and understand the positioning of the people experience and FPA within that. Once we've done that, we'll jump into the solution itself and we'll have a look at the software in action from a number of different points of view. But let's start off just with a few slides of positioning them. So first of all, let's start off by understanding, well, what is it that organizations are trying to achieve? Well, typically we find that everybody in any organization is fundamentally trying to answer every day 4 questions. Those questions are time-based, so how have we done? How are we doing today? Where are we going? And also, what should we be doing? And if we just take a moment to really understand those 4 questions and where the people experience fits into that and the different aspects of that people experience, I think that'll set us up nicely for the demonstration. So let's start with those first 2 questions: the how have we done and how are we doing? So typically organizations have equipped themselves with back-end execution systems of record, as you can see here, ERP, talent management, financial management, so on and so forth. Because these systems enforce a consistent process, a standard process, they're incredibly predictable in the sense that we know the type of data we're capturing and collecting and how it needs to be stored. They're incredibly reliable. And as you know, Unit 4 offer those capabilities. However, when it comes to the future-looking questions, so the where are we going and what should we be doing, these are slightly less predictable than the past. These are all about being able to cope with change, the variability of the real world, the unknown that's going to be coming down the line. So things like variability, fluctuating demand, emerging markets, natural calamities, seasonality, all of these different things can happen. Or when you think of, rather I should say, when you think of all of the different things that can happen to any organization on any day of the week, that list that we've got up there must be endless. And so what is it that organizations do to cope with this variability? Well, typically we find them turning to Excel, which is a personal productivity tool. So it doesn't look too harmful just there, but when you really think about how Excel's being used, this personal productivity tool, it's really, we're trying to use it more like a database. So we've got all of our calculations, we're generating information in this personal productivity tool, and we're using that information on which to base business critical decisions. In fact, Excel by itself, or being used in this way, an Excel-centric solution is incredibly resource intensive, lacks accountability. Security is almost non-existent. It's hugely error prone, open to human errors, multiple versions of the truth, very silo-based. The list goes on. Fundamentally, we can't really trust the data that we're generating within Excel. And like I say, we're basing business critical decisions on that data. And so we end up finding that we're spending a lot of time manipulating and auditing these Excel spreadsheets on a daily basis. Something like 80% of a standard user's time is spent tinkering with Excel, auditing Excel, building Excel spreadsheets. Therefore, only 20% of their time is actually adding value to the organization. And so we'd like to see that statistic stood on its head. So we're spending 80% of the time adding value, fulfilling the requirements of our duties, rather than tinkering with logic in the background. And we'll talk about how that can be achieved as we start going through the solution. Now, you'll notice there's one question here that I haven't spoken about. What should we be doing? Question. Well, this is currently empty, and the reason is, coming back to that explanation a moment ago, we very rarely get to that question, very rarely get to answer that question. What should we be doing? Because we're spending all that time working with where are we going and trying to patch holes and so on and so forth within the Excel environment. Now, the what should we be doing question is all about being able to leverage data behavior and data insights in order to then look forward and say, well, based on how we have performed in the past, based on the behavior of the information and those insights, what's the likely outcome? So we're fundamentally talking about trend-based plans, statistical forecast, artificial intelligence. And you notice during all of this, I haven't spoken specifically about cost planning or income reporting, because fundamentally, Unit 4 FP&A allows you to analyze, track, report on data, forecast, plan on data, regardless of whether it's financial, operational, or otherwise. So let's take a look at that Unit 4 FP&A solution then. So this wheel here, you can see a few things that the Unit 4 FP&A platform offers. So firstly, in fact, I have a list built up just over here on the right that mirrors pretty much all of that capability in that circle there. So first of all, Unit 4 FP&A offers pre-built, highly usable, highly configurable content. The content ranges from things like consolidations, so statutory consolidations. We've got an application for that. It works fundamentally out of the box with some configuration, some adaptation of where you go. Same for risk management, same for financial planning, budgeting and forecasting, which we'll be touching on today. A big key to that, or another big step with that, is not only do we have the pre-built content that you can configure to mirror and replicate your requirements, but then on top of that, the FP&A platform is highly collaborative. So multiple users are able to log on, contribute to the plans, perform the analysis, understand all of that rich information that we've gathered, leverage all of that pre-built content. And when you start thinking about collaborating, individuals collaborating together, you really start talking about being able to join up an organization. So even less time is wasted on phone calls, on emails. Of course, there's still, communication is still fundamentally important, but having a system, having a solution that encourages and allows collaboration on a single version of the truth is really the key to becoming an agile organization, able to make decisions in near real time. Now, further to the pre-built content, because there's no such thing necessarily as one size fits all, there's always going to be specific idiomatic pieces to any organization where we need to be able to plan and model in this specific way. So of course the FP&A platform supports all of that modeling, all of that planning capability, that if you've got very specific requirements, you can model those out within the platform itself, all in that single central location. Now, the ease of use, you'll see this as we go through. I'll let you make up your own minds on that. And certainly something spoken about previously, the AI capability. So this focuses specifically on that what should we be doing question. So the Unit 4 FP&A platform not only allows you to collaborate and collect information, report on historical data and also plans, but within the solution itself, there's also baked in artificial intelligence. And we can use that AI in a couple of different ways. We'll touch on that in the demonstration. And that AI allows us to leverage, as I say, that historical data to give us an idea of where we might be going. When you couple that with the reporting capability, the self-service analytics, the dashboarding capability, it really becomes an end-to-end tool from a performance management point of view. So I spoke about self-service analytics just then, and we will be looking at that in more detail, because fundamentally, what is planning without the analysis? Typically, you perform some analysis to gain some insight on where you have gone, where you want to go, and that's going to inform and underpin then your decisions of where you are going to go, including being able to leverage that AI that we just spoke about. Alerts and notifications, these are all built into the platform. So there's no extra configuration. You're simply able to take advantage of those alerts and navigate and notifications, send out SMSs, send out emails to users based on thresholds being met, based on task change in status, and so on and so forth. Now, I know I had a go at Excel a moment ago. However, it's really the way that we're using Excel at the moment is the problem. Excel itself and Word and PowerPoint are incredibly useful tools. So we've embraced that, and we're able to continue using those Office products, Excel, Word and PowerPoint, but now we're able to link directly back to that single central version of the truth and pull out data, pull out structure, and bring those directly into our documents. If you think about a management pack, a board report, when we'll have the up-to-date figures, the latest costs, then we're able to embed those values directly into that document, whether it's a PowerPoint, whether it's a Word document, whether it's an Excel file. If any changes happen, they automatically trickle through. When you think about how long it takes to create those sorts of documents and validate them and check them, it's a huge amount of work every month. So I'll also take a moment to have a look through that. Finally, on cloud and on premises, either way, if you've got a specific requirement for one or the other, it's the same offering, it's the same solution, regardless of whether we're talking about on cloud or on premises. So with that, when we then have a look at those 4 questions that we're trying to answer every day, from the how have we done through to the what should we be doing, we can see how we're leveraging different aspects of the solution execution systems, reporting analysis, planning and budgeting, artificial intelligence. And Unit4 offers all of these within the people experience, enabling all of the whole organization to be able to start adding value and spending less time fighting against data and fighting against human errors and the intrinsic issues with the heritage systems. So with that, let's jump into the solution itself. Now, for the most part of this demonstration, I'm going to be working in a web browser. So I happen to be using Chrome, and I'm going to log on as administrator. It means I've got access to the full depth, the full breadth of capabilities. However, of course, if you wanted single sign-on, you'd be able to use that. And depending on who you were logging in, you'd only be able to see and do what you're allowed to see and do. So there's a robust security layer coupled with that single sign-on, really makes it a very powerful solution. So let's log in, and at the same time, I'm also going to full screen this. So once I log in, I'm presented with a landing page, and this landing page firstly can be configured per user. So if a different user logs in, say a budget holder logs in, the only screen they're going to see is their data entry form. Somebody else logs in, maybe they're going to get more of a navigation menu like we see here. In this example, the navigation menu allows me to navigate throughout the solution. So reporting, ad hoc analysis, planning, and so on and so forth. These reports can look as you want them to look. In this case, we've used a lot of green and grey, but if you preferred blue and whatever other colour, of course you can create all of that, or you can configure all of that. Any reports that are specifically required can be easily set up centrally and can be pushed out to those users, again, still based on the fundamental security of what the users have access to. Now, the application we're looking at today is our integrated financial planning application. We refer to it as the IFP, and it comes with some pre-built content. The pre-built content, first of all, I think some of the main points here are the reporting capabilities on the core financials. So here, first thing I've got is my profit and loss. I've got 4 different reports for my profit and loss. Now notice, if you work with income expenditure or SOCI or what have you, then it's fundamentally performing the same role. It's just got a different name fundamentally. So of course, profit and loss can be changed to something more in line with your current naming conventions. We've also got balance sheet, and we've also got cash flow. And the important thing to realize here with the IFP is these core financials come out of the box. It's a case of loading up your chart of accounts. It's a case of loading up your trial balance, and fundamentally, you're there ready to start working with your monthly reporting, or your management reporting. The planning pieces I'll talk about in just a moment. So I think that's quite a big win here with Unit4 FP&A. Any other reports that don't come out of the box, so in this case I've got my P&L over time, I've got a structured P&L and so on and so forth. Any other types of reports that I want to create, like I say, very straightforward to create. We can simply build those reports and then push them out centrally to those different users. Let's go into the profit and loss structured to begin with, and let's start just there. So the profit and loss structures, as I've said, this is an example of a report. So across the top, we've got different versions and time horizons. So we're looking at actual current year compared to actual for the prior year. We've got the various variances, both in absolute and percentage terms. Comparing those to the plan for the current year, again with the variances and conditional formatting to highlight where we might have some issues that we need to address. And then also we've got our plan for next year, again with variance analysis. You'll notice our plan for next year at the moment is very low, but that's because we haven't really started doing any planning, and that's the purposes of what we're going to be stepping through today. From a profit and loss point of view or an income expenditure point of view, you can see here we've got our accounts down the side, but like I've said, if you wanted, I don't know, cost centers down the side or projects down the side, of course you'd be able to configure the reports or create as many reports with the appropriate formatting that you required. In this example as well, I'll just point out some of the things up at the top here. So we've got a period selection. If I click on that, you can see there's a number of different periods and scenarios or versions. So we've got actuals, budgets, plans, and we've also got cumulative periods, so things like year to dates and year to goes as well. Now, the reason we've got this structure in this example is it's conceivable to think that we're going to hold our actuals down to quarter, down to month level historically. But when we start looking forward in time, then maybe we might plan or budget the current year by month. And then when we start looking further out into the future, we might only have our budget for next year, our plan for next year down to quarters, and then the following years might be just at a yearly level. So you can really control the granularity, the detail at which you want to hold your data in different versions. In this example, if I choose a different version, then it's going to directly impact what I see on the reports, and the comparators will all update. The next piece I'd like to point out here from a generic point of view is this variance or simulation selection. So this is built-in capability. You'll notice that I'm currently using the best case. We've also got, I'm using the base case. We've also got best case, we've got worst case. We can create as many different cases as we want to, such as Brexit case and so on and so forth. Each one of these cases is effectively a copy of the data. I can go into my best case and maybe test a few things. What happens if exchange rates go up? What happens if interest rates go down? How's that going to affect my bottom line? Now, the data in the base case always stays the same. It's always exactly as it's been set. But in the best case and worst case scenarios and any other scenarios that I create, simulations that I create, I'm able to use those simulations to test different outcomes. And then maybe at some point, one of those simulations may be committed to the base case. And this is inherent functionality of the solution. All users, based on security rights, potentially would have access to these simulations as well. So they can review those different cases, those different simulations as part of their opinion forming when it comes to that planning stage. Further to this, the P&L or income statement, however you want to call it, out of the box comes with a number of different dimensions or different analysis points. So legal entity, profit center, and cost center. Of course, you can add further dimensions. You can remove dimensions if they're not required. That's all part of the easy configuration stage. In this case, however, we're taking full advantage of the those selections. And you'll notice here, if you keep an eye on the numbers in the background, when I choose a specific legal entity, all of the data updates. So fundamentally, this report is a template rather than having different tabs like I would have done in Excel for the different selections of legal entity, profit center, and indeed cost center, and any other dimensions that you want to use for analysis. Here I've got one report that allows me to flick between those selections, and I'm now focusing on a very specific area of the organization. Let alone the capability to then export this report either to Excel, including all the formatting, or indeed to PDF, and I can then send that around if I needed to. Further to this, though, from a functionality point of view, I'm interested, let's say, in what's going on within some of the detail within this chart of accounts. So I can point and click, and of course I could have pluses and minuses on the side here, but in this case, when I point and click, it shows me the detail underneath. So a little table appears underneath. If I click on something that's got a lot of detail, such as value added, the moment I click there, I've got all of that rich detail showing me the underlying information that makes up the number I'm looking at. So remember, this would be your chart of accounts. This would be your trial balance. Could also potentially even add an action here where we can point and click and drill through to the underlying data itself. So the individual transactions, we're probably getting into that as we go through. If I close that down just for a second, might jump back in there a bit later on. But the same is true from the balance sheet point of view. And this is really key when it comes to Unit 4 FP&A, is those core financials are pre-built. They're ready and waiting for us to load up our accounts, configure the relationship between those core financials, the effect the P&L has on the balance sheet, the cash flow and so on, and away we go. Now in this example, we're going to be focusing on a planning capability. But just before we jump into that, a couple of other points that I'd like to make. So with all of the pre-built applications, there comes a wealth of capability, really. So you can see as I'm scrolling down here in the planning selection, we've got things like project planning, loan planning, investment planning. So the application comes with all of these different sub-plans, which can be configured, can be built on, can be changed in order to meet your requirements. In the example that we'll be looking at today, I'm going to go very specifically into a workflow review. Now, the workflow review can be laid out as you require. In this example, it's tabular, and I've got a list of tasks along with the relevant owners of those tasks. So if the CRO in this example logged in, then they would only get to see the tasks for which they were responsible. So the target setting and the simulation analysis. If, for example, marketing were to log in, they would then only see the tasks for which they had responsibility. I'm just going to switch that filter off again so we can see the full list of tasks. So the process that we'll touch on a couple of pieces of this as we go through the demo today is kind of twofold. So it starts with a top-down process followed by a bottom-up process. And this isn't a dictation of this is how you must work. This is an example of capability. So the story I'm kind of taking you through today is one of top-down and bottom-up. We're going to start off setting a target. So how much money do we want to make next year? But of course, this could be how much money do we want to spend next year? This could be how many people do I need working in specific areas of the organization next year? It's just a value that we're going to be setting as a target. We're then going to massage that value through the regions, through the products, but of course, regions and products could be relevant to your organization, so projects, cost centers, whatever it may be. And also we massage that target throughout time. We need to make sure we've got the right people in the right places at the right time. So if we've got the workforce to support the target we're setting. And then once we've done that, it's a bottom-up submission process. So based on the target that we've set, how do the budget holders feel that they're going to spend the money, make the money, what have you. We've also got some simulation analysis and also some cost planning capability within this solution. So let's just start off with a couple of the top-down tasks and move throughout the workflow structure. So in this example, if we've logged on as the CRO, the first task we've got is to set up the target and get the whole process running. So we're going to the trend review screen, and the first thing you'll probably notice then is that freeform layout. So okay, we've looked at some tabular reports so far, or tabular output. You can also have, it's cell-based. So if I highlight any one of these cells here, you can see how it's a cell-based solution. So you've got freeform layouts. One of the things about this interface is any data that's in the solution can be exposed based on security rights, so that the user gets to see all of the information from across the organization that will support them in doing their job. So in this case, we can see how we've performed over the past couple of years, and this is the task that we've got to achieve. So we need to set next year's target. We're currently talking about revenue, so this is a revenue trend review. However, these could be costs, these could be FTEs. It's fundamentally, could be based on your application. So we can see in the past that our actuals compared to our plan, we've not executed our plan particularly well. In fact, we've come well underneath that. And we can also see we've got year-on-year growth followed by a year of contraction. That's then clearly laid out in a nice, clean, or out-of-the-box waterfall representation and I'm able to see our actuals are well below our plan, so we're not executing plan. We've also then got relevant other visualizations, so line graphs to represent how we're going through time. In this case, we've got some gauges, which I appreciate can be emotive. You don't have to use gauges. You could just have the big number 15, the big number 109 with pointing up arrows and pointing down arrows and things like that. The point of this, however, is that our market share, this 15% market share, I need this piece of information to decide what am I going to do next year. Now this single number 15, which is not where we want to be, we can see that it's in red, it's well below where we want to be, could very well be generated from a full model that lives within the solution that underpins that number 15. But from a high level view, this is all I care about. We've got some issues with our market share. I might be able to drill into that, try and understand why and where, because when we then look at the next piece of information, well, our sales reps are performing particularly well. They're at 110% of their quota. We've got some capacity for more stock, so operational data comes in. We've also got some financial data where we can see our marketing budget is well below where it should be. Now, Unit 4 FP&A is not just about numbers. It's not just about planning, it's also about analysis, it's also about sentiment. So numbers only ever make up half the story. What I want to be able to do is get everybody collaborating and working towards the same goals. So in this little text box here, I'm able to enter my opinions, my findings, so I can see we're consistently missing plan figures, market shares below target, and so on. I've also written things that I want to achieve. So we need to increase FTEs across the regions. We need to increase brand awareness, launch new products, and so on and so forth. That can then be viewed by the rest of the organization or the relevant people based on security rights. So with all of the information I've gleaned, let's have a look at setting the target for next year. I'm going to say that I expect next year that we're going to behave pretty much how we're performed in the current year, or how we're performing in the current year. So it takes that 35.7, and there we can see that as the base, and it's also the target. We've done nothing to it. We've just said we're going to perform in the same way, 35.7 million. My stock capacity updates, along with any other relevant areas of the organization, or the screen, I should say. Now, what would happen if we grew that revenue by 10%? Remember, this could equally be costs or expense. If we grow by 10%, we're going to be looking at a target of about 39.3, and again, our stock capacity changes to reflect that. Well, let's round that up to 40 million. We now see our target is set at 40 million. That's an 11.8 or a 12% growth in revenue in this example across the organization. So let's start the workflow. When I start the workflow, we see that status of not started then becomes approved. And this is now kicking off all of the various underpinning or dependent tasks, and also sending email alerts to those task holders to say that their workflow is now in progress. When we go back to that review workflow screen, we now see that it's slightly updated, and we've got a number of other tasks that are now ready to be worked on by those individual users. So we can see they're now in progress, in progress, in progress. If we were to log on as the sales individual, we'd see we've got two tasks. We've got our regional target setting plan, which is in progress, and our bottom-up sales plan, which is not started. So let's jump into that regional target setting, at least. So the regional target setting is now all about taking that target, that 40 million target, and working out how we're going to make that. You know, if this wasn't revenue, if this was expense, it'd be a case of, well, where are we going to spend this money? In this example, it happens to be revenue. So logged on as this sales individual, I can see the base was how we're performing this year, and I can see that's 35.7 million. Our target is currently 40 million. I can see that represented graphically, both from a base and a target point of view. I'll talk about the FTE constraints in just a moment. Let's just drill down into some analysis, because you'll notice this interface is very hierarchical. It represents the organization. We've got total regions split by north and south, and then within each one of those, we've got the different regions. And of course, this could be deeper. This could be more detailed. So we can see our base, 17.5, 6.5, 5 million. And we can then see that uplift of 11.8 or 12% to our target. So our 40 million has already been allocated based on the profile of current year actuals all the way down to those individual regions. We can also see the contribution of each area. So North is responsible for 49% of the total, whereas Region 1 is responsible for 37% of its total. When it comes to planning, it's much more than just setting scenarios and setting profiles and away you go. Now we've got an opinion on all of this. So that 40 million, well, I think instead of 19.6 being allocated to North, I'm going to override that. Instead of it being 49% of its parent, I'm going to say my North region, we're going to do some advertising. There's a marketing campaign going on in North, and I expect North to then be responsible for 52% of that value. Therefore, South is responsible for the remainder, 48%, 19.2. So we've now got a new target, not just in North, but also allocated throughout the regions. We'll see now we've got a variance of 19%. Because of that reallocation, it's just 5 over on this arm of the organisation. And of course, that reallocation, that breaking away from the profile and introducing my opinion and my knowledge of the external world into the planning process can occur at any level. So we can see the base in Region 1 was 6.5. We want to do 7.7. But actually, we're going to have quite a strong year in Region 1. We're going to be doing some very specific marketing in that particular area. So I'm going to say that's going to be 8.5 million. When I do that, we then see how the target automatically updates over on these other 2 regions because we're constrained to the target of 20.8. So we're effectively just reallocating that 20.8. In fact, I could hold this value. What holding means is saying keep the base exactly the same. So it's currently 5.6. When I click hold, we'll see how my target drops. Sorry, not 5084. We'll see how my target now drops to 5084, and my target on Region 3 then increases. Now, all the while we've been doing this, the little orange bar, the FTE constraint, has been set and stayed exactly as it was, because this is all about bringing some reality, bringing some constraints into the opinion making or decision making. So it's all very well saying we want to make 40 million or we want to spend 40 million, depending on what the data is. But do we have the resources to do that? In this example, I've picked FTE. But of course, you could be constrained by any number of things, number of hours in the day, number of pre-agreed hours that you're going to spend, number of people that are going to work. This could be absolutely anything, not amount of office space you may have, and so on and so forth. So in this case, I've chosen FTE. An FTE could be constrained by the amount of office space, by the number of chairs, by the number of phone lines. But let's just take a moment to talk through that. So last year, or the current year's actuals, we made 6.5 million. We want to make 8.5. So last year we had, or the current year's actuals, we had 3.5 FTEs. They were performing at 117% of quota. If they carry on performing at 117% of quota, you will need 4.56 FTEs to achieve that target. Now, supposing that they don't perform quite so well, supposing they're only performing 100% of their quota. Remember, this doesn't have to be sales. This could be FTEs based on number of hours that they work, number of part-time, full-time employees that you have, and so on. If they only work at 100% of quota, we'll then see that the required FTEs increases to 5.3. So we can now perform some what-if analysis. Well, supposing we employ 5 people. If on average they work as we expect them to, or deliver as we expect them to, we'll see that we're likely to achieve 7.9. So we're going to be 7% short of where we want to be. So I can click this little blue button just here to accept the required amount, and we'll now see that the FTE number will deliver the target that we want. Now, of course, I can do that for every single aspect of the solution. In this case, I've got a little button up here that will just set the required FTEs to, or the planned FTEs to exactly what we require. This, because we're talking about joining up an organization, would then flow through to our HR task and our people planning, our people analysis, because now we know that the plans dictate that we need more resource. Let's have a quick look at the workflow. So from a workflow point of view, workflow can be as sophisticated or as simplistic as it needs to be. From simply a flag of it's been completed through to something a little more rigorous where we've got a to and fro and represent that cyclic process. So in this case, I can see I currently own the task. I can see when it was started and any comments associated with that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to submit that task. I'm submitting this task to the CRO. Of course, that could be any other user. And I'm also going to write a comment. So FT is in line with targets. I could also, and this text is held within the solution as well. So it's subject to security. So other users would potentially be able to see the information that I'm typing in. We can also right-click and add attachments. So here I can insert a document, maybe my shadow Excel system. I'm still working with that. As an individual, I'm using it for personal productivity, but I want to support it. I want to submit it as supporting evidence for why I believe my world is going to look like this next year. In this case, I think that will do. I'm just going to click update, and it then changes the current status of that task from in progress to submitted. It also updates all of those details, who the current owner is, and so on and so forth. Let's go back to review that workflow and see how we're getting on. So back in the workflow review screen, we can now see that the regional target setting is submitted. Currently with the CRO, so when the CRO logs in, they're going to see that extra task there. That needs to be reviewed, approved, rejected, and so on. But you'll notice this number 2. What that number 2 is it's showing us all of the previous statuses of this task. So it's the history, the lifetime of that task in this round of planning. So we can see it was not started owned by sales. It was then set to in progress owned by sales with this comment, and it's now been submitted and it's owned by the CRO with this comment. So we can track who's doing what, how often does something get rejected, is there a specific budget holder that tends to over budget or under budget and get their task rejected quite commonly. It's all about analysis, it's all about understanding and surfacing all of that rich content. So we've taken that 40 million and allocated it throughout the organization. Let's now do it from a slightly different perspective. Let's have a look at this from a product planning. And again, you'll appreciate this doesn't have to be products. It doesn't have to be income. It could be projects. It could be hours. Data is fundamentally just data. And these names are, in this example, just names. We happen to be talking about products. So same numbers, 35.7, 40 million, 12% variance. However, now we're looking at a different structure. We're now looking at this from a product point of view. So as I drill down into those hierarchies, I can then see the different breakdown of both the base and also the target. So my job here now as the marketing individual is to decide what we're going to do in order to meet this target. There's a few things about the real world that I know about that maybe the system doesn't. For example, based on how we performed last year, it looks like our target for product group 2 is going to be nearly 16 million. However, I think that we're only going to be able to do 15 million. So when I type in that override value, we'll see how that then is accepted as the target, and then the difference is reallocated to the other products in order to get back to that 40 million. So we say that's a 5% variance. Now, the reason we're only going to be able to do 15 million is because product 1, although it's a very strong performer, we're having issues with the supplier. In fact, we're going to end of life product 1, and we're going to plan for a new product to take its place. We'll see that product 1 is currently 49% of the total, so it contributes 49% of our group 1 income, or like I say, if this was expenditure, it would be that story. So let's say that instead of being 49%, product 1 is only going to be able to deliver 25% of the total, which is 3.7 million. We'll see that's a drastic drop, which means the other products have to work far too hard. System tells us this is a very unlikely plan. 55% increase on these products is particularly unlikely. However, it's still done the reallocation. Let's just end of life product 1. So we're going to plan to end of life that on the 5th month. Like I say, we're going to introduce a new product to pick up that slack, and the planning solution allows us to do just that. So I'll click my Add Remove Products button, and here I can create a new product. You can appreciate that this would be the same for a new member of staff, for a new project, for anything that you wanted to add from an ethereal planning point of view. Of course, any new products and new projects that are happening back in our source systems will be loaded directly into the solution. This is all about looking forward into the unknown So we've got our new product just here, and I might decide that actually I'm going to say hard code 3 million. That's what we expect our new product to do. Let's switch back to the analysis point of view, and we'll see how that chart is now updated in line with the information that we're entering. So our new product has not just appeared on the table, it's also appeared there in the chart. We'll say that this new product, we're going to launch that in the 3rd month. And further to this, I'm going to give it a base profile. Because it's a new product, we don't necessarily know how it's going to behave in the future, but I'm going to tell the system that it's going to be similar to product 1. So when it comes to planning and forecasting and predicting where we might be for this product, use the behavior of product 1 as a basis for that future looking information. We'll also apply some marketing spend. In fact, if I don't, I can't actually submit this task. And you'll see as I do that, the marketing budget graphical representation also updates. So this is looking a little more healthy. However, we'll see product 2, 2.4 million, 2.7 million. I know a bit about these products. I think that's unlikely. Of course, I could ignore or hold, but in this case, I'm going to use some AI. So the 2.5 million we did last year for product 2, let's use some AI to understand where we might go or where we might be with product 2 in the future. So here in the forecast assistant screen, we're focusing on product 2. We've got 12 months worth of prior year actual, 12 months worth of current year actual. In fact, I've highlighted an extra month there. Let's just highlight that, and I can see there's my 2.4 million. What I can then do is highlight all of that data that I want the system to consider. I can highlight the areas I want to calculate. With a simple right click, I can choose to then enter my forecast wizard, and I've got a bunch of forecasting capabilities in here, from fairly advanced things like exponential smoothing, interpolation, through to standard sort of arithmetic, but also the deep learning function, which I'll pick today. The deep learning function is looking back at that data behavior in the past, and you can see the green line there, that's the forecast, the system generated forecast. Based on how we have performed in the past, the system thinks this is a reasonable outlook. And you can kind of see that flat line occurring in the past a couple of times. You can see the big spike towards the end of the year. So it's using the built-in intelligence to give us an idea of where we might be in 12 months' time, in 24 months' time, 30, however many months we want to work with. Of course, I can override that both from drag and dropping the graph itself, or indeed when I write those values back, I then have the capability to go in and change any one of those if I have specific feelings. So I'll type in 200K just there, and we'll see now our target is 2.46. Let's click done and go back to our target setting. Back in the target settings screen, we'll then see that 2.46 million has been accepted as our new target for that particular product, that particular area of the organization. There it is. We've then got some reallocation in order to come back to the 15, in order to come back to the 40, and so on. The other piece that's interesting here from a standard out-the-box capability is commentary. So text all the way, thinking about sharing sentiment with people. So not only can I have specific areas of comments, in this case for specific products, but I can also attach commentary just with a right click to individual cells. So new product marketing. Better than just tapping away on my keyboard, I suppose. Anytime we've got a comment, we'll see that little triangle, and users are able to review that commentary as part of that process. Again, we've got that workflow capability to be able to track who's doing what. That accountability is really increased by knowing who's doing what, where, and when. So in this case, I'm going to submit this to the CRO, and let's add a comment there. We can then update this task, and let's move through to the next topic. So once that task has been updated, we can jump back to the review workflow screen. And the next task in this is to allocate that data throughout time. So we've allocated across periods, we've allocated across regions, across products. However, what I'd quite like to do is maybe have a look at some of the people planning. We've already touched on from a regional perspective, the capability, or the restriction, I should say. Do we have enough resource to be able to deliver on the requirements? So let's jump into the people planning side of things. As far as the people planning is concerned, different users from across the organization may very well work with people planning. And as soon as the screen loads, there we go. We're able to see then the different ways that we're analyzing our people, or analyzing our HR planning. So first of all, we've got the region selection up at the top here. We've then got our different employees that we can select, the different accounts, and also the different scenarios. We're currently looking at plan for next year, but of course I can cycle back in time. So actuals for the current year, actuals for the prior year to that, and so on and so forth. So just by pointing and clicking, we can scroll through time, indeed for next year, and also I believe for the year after that, we've got some data as well. So what we're currently looking at is a breakdown of all of those costs for all of our employees. We've also got some budget details. So do we have any more money to employ people? And I can also click on my employee list and see a list of all of the employees for total regions. In this case, this is my full list of employees that are underpinning my, in this case, revenue. Now I might be interested specifically in one of those employees. So when I point and click, it focuses my analysis on that individual along with the rest of their team. So we're now looking at region 1 just for Bob James. In fact, I could click back on total employees, and I'm now focusing on region 1, the breakdown of the costs within that area of my organization. You'll notice up at the top, our current capacity will miss our target by nearly 1 million. We need to increase FTEs to meet that target. So let's have a look at this then by target and understand what that's about. So in the by target layout, I can see all of the details that are useful to be able to review as far as targets are concerned. So this list of employees is able to support this much income, this much revenue, this much spend, this many hours of projects, whatever it may be. In this case, we're talking about salespeople being able to support income to revenues to sales. But of course, like I say, this could be people working on projects. This could be people raising funds, number of hours that they're able to work, and so on. We saw that we'd already set that target of 8.5 million. There it is for region 1. So we can see there's a slight difference, slight discrepancy in what my team is currently able to do versus what they need to do. So we come back to that constraint-based planning. We can also review things like the productivity, which takes into account things like holidays, things like sicknesses, absences, and so on. And we can also review the FTE value, so the number of FTEs that are supporting this. So it clearly looks like I'm going to need to employ at least one person, or maybe borrow somebody from some other area of the organization. But just like we added a new product, let's go ahead and plan for a new employee. Again, if we'd already planned for this back in our source system, that individual will be available there already. So this is about future-looking unknowns. We're not sure who it's going to be, so we'll just say that this individual is a TBC. And we'll say that they're going to be working in region 1. Of course, they could work in a number of different regions. We'll also then choose a grade for that individual. Let's say that they're going to be a grade A. Maybe we've got somebody in mind. If we employ grade A, we should be able to deal with that discrepancy. And let's give them a start date. I'm going to say, I appreciate where we are, but from a planning point of view, let's say March 2020 is ahead of us. So I'm going to say they're going to start in March. No end date in mind. They're going to be a full FTE. Of course, I could say they're a 0.5, 0.75. And then what happens is the system automatically works out based on their grade or their band, what their yearly salary is, their car allowance and quota. The table below also fills up, and we'll see that this new grade A employee is going to be ramping up to be able to fulfill their target. In this case, we can see then the capacity versus the target throughout time. And we'll see that actually it looks like their capacity is going to exceed their target, which is pretty good. So let's have a look at that from a total employees point of view. Firstly, Looks like we're going to be just over our target by 15,500, which is good. Not a great deal of wiggle room. Looks like we're going to be below target for the first quarter. We're going to be above target for the first quarter. We're going to have a bit of a dip in 05, but it looks like overall we're going to do pretty well. The other point to this is, okay, we now know that if we employ somebody of that caliber, we should be okay. But the other question is can we afford that individual? So it looks, as far as our budget's concerned, like we might struggle a little bit as far as the costs are concerned, because those costs that we're looking at seem to be a little high. Let's say we employ somebody of a grade B. Maybe that budget gap would close enough and we'd still be able to hit or indeed exceed our target. So simply by changing that grade B from that what if point of view, I'm able to then see those results and see hopefully we'll still be within target to some extent. I want to refresh that. We've only just jumped a little bit below where we'd want to be, but that's absolutely fine. We can see that with some further planning, maybe we could look at borrowing somebody from another department to be able to really close this gap a little bit further. Let's jump back to that review workflow, and with an eye on time, you'll appreciate there's plenty more points, plenty more aspects of this process, and also the solution, such as the bottom-up capability, simulation analysis, cost planning that we could touch on. But what I'd like to do now is maybe have a look at the other piece that we were speaking about earlier. So we spoke about AI, we spoke about planning, spoke about reporting, but what about the analysis and the dashboarding capability? So within the single instance, this single interface, not only does the user have access to these reports, all this rich functionality, but they've also then got access to dashboards. So if I open up one of these dashboards as an example, we then see how we've got some rich graphical representations that can really bring that data to life. And when you think about the planning process, it's about having an opinion of what the data is going to be, and that opinion needs to be based on something. You can't really answer questions without interacting with information. So that's exactly what these dashboards and this self-service capability is all about. It's about being able to interrogate the information in easy to consume fashion. So there are different ways of laying data out, from bar graphs through to geographical representations, through to funnels, and some bubble diagrams, and so on and so forth. In this case, the best fit graphical representations are some pie graphs, some stacked bar graphs, and also a map. And all of this is interactive. If this model went further into more detail than just Germany, I could point and click and drill into the different areas of Germany. All of the capability you're seeing here is all standard out-of-the-box functionality. So the moment I point and click on any one of these items, I'm now focusing in on that area of data. Here we're looking at the costs of products by channel, and I can simply point and click, and we can then drill into maybe the channel as an example. We can now see that our in-house is doing a lot better than maybe the other areas of the organization. Let's maybe drill into an area of our products, and then maybe drill down a bit further into more detail there. And as I'm performing all of those drill throughs, I can, as well as you've already seen, remove items from charts in order to focus in and really bring out my analysis. The same is true up on this graph at the top here. We can point and click and drill through to the relevant level of detail, start removing items to really focus our analysis, and we're able to see now all of that rich detail, as well as take advantage of those breadcrumbs. So it's made the system's recording where we're drilling to, where we've drilled from, so that we're able to then simply point and click and start drilling up that chain of analysis back to where we were, without having to maybe sit there with a notepad and a piece of paper. Now, all of these things are very interesting in the sense that they look good and they look very rich and dynamic. But I think one of the big things here is, well, how easy is it to create these items? So let's have a few moments just looking at that. So I'm going to simply right click on my personal dashboards area, and I'm going to create a new dashboard. So let's call this dashboard 1. We can embed the worksheets that you've already seen. So if we had a highly formatted P&L as an example, or alternatively, we can embed widgets, and we can have as many of these as you've just seen on the reports as we like. We can also review what this might look like on a device. So if I want to see what this dashboard, once I've created, look like a smartphone or a tablet, I'd be able to point and click and do that. But otherwise, let's use the pencil button and go ahead and select maybe our income statement, and let's just do a light bit of analysis to be able to really understand, you know, how easy is it to interact with the data. So first of all, it shows me all of my points of analysis. So I might go in and choose 1 or 2 as default selections. I can then start dragging and dropping, and I can even start making my selections here. So I might want to drill down and select a specific area of the database to perform my analysis. Let's say we're interested in our current year actual and our plan for next year. If I decide to right click on those items, I can also show those items with children. So let's do that for plan for next year as well. When I choose OK, of course I need to put something down the side. Let's put our income statement down the side. When I choose OK, I then get to see those items I've just selected and also drill down and roll up and take advantage of all of the standard capability you'd expect. Let's do the same thing here with our income statement, our chart of accounts. I'm going to hide everything, and let's maybe grab almost arbitrarily my operating expenses. We'll show them with the children, and we'll also do the same thing for my personnel expenses. I'm just interested in those two items, and there they are. So we're looking at our actual current year versus plan for next year. Of course, we can sort, we can filter, but then to create an attractive looking diagram, it's just a case of point and click. If I wanted a pie graph, not this data lends itself to a pie graph, it is just a case of choosing the graphical representation that fits the best. We can also, using simple drag and drop capability, we can then have a look at some variances, maybe switch those to percentages. Now, straight away, the moment that I've created that, so if I accept those changes, I can then start interacting with it in the way you've already seen. Let's drill down in my operating expenses. Let's drill through to my current year actuals. Let's have a look at Q2. So you can see that capability that we were touching on previously is available out of the box. The moment I create that analysis, it's ready to go. So today we've spent quite a lot of time focusing on planning and the people plan we touched on just there. Had a look at some of the analysis, some of the built-in AI capability. There's plenty more in there. Today was just really about some of the capability broadly that the solution offers. There are further pieces such as the Microsoft Office integration that we could touch on. There's further functionality around planning in different topics, in different organizations, different verticals and so on. But hopefully that's been a good flavor for the last hour. Just going to pause to see if there's any questions come through. I'll see if we can address any just now. But otherwise, hopefully that's been a good use of your time. And if there's any further questions, feel free to ask them now. Or we look forward to being in touch with you to take you into further detail of the capability of the solution. So thank you very much for listening, and thank you for your time. And I hope you have a good rest of the week. Thank you.